Thank you, Jeff, and thank you everyone for joining this this webinar. We are incredibly excited about the partnership with the Met Section, one of a number of PGA section partnerships that we have developed. As we look to go to market, and very thrilled to have all of you here. I actually, ironically, am in Manhattan for a sort of 10-day trip around Manhattan, Philadelphia, and Boston up to the Open next week. So I actually join you from the right side of the pond, so to speak. So, but really, I guess the important thing is just to say thank you very much for being here. Thank you for joining the webinar. I'm one of the co-founders of Clipped, and ordinarily this is such an important piece of the jigsaw for us in terms of you, the coaches, the instructors, the people on the ground day in, day out. Because as Jeff says, technology has transformed the game. It has transformed your business. It has transformed the sport into a data-driven sport. And there's now so much data in golf, but it's not really going anywhere. And of course, that is a frustration that we alighted on, me and my co-founder, some years ago, and a problem that we're trying to solve. So whether it's on course, whether it's off course, whether it's technologies that the tour players are using like ShotLink, or you are using like TrackMan, players are using in terms of Garmin, Arcos, everything that is there has fundamentally transformed the game. And where we are now is perhaps where cycling and running was a decade ago. And in bringing everything together, we hope very much to create a new way of leveraging the technology that you have invested so much time and effort in. And so, following thousands of hours of conversations with instructors, with teaching professionals and coaches all across the US, Europe, and beyond, we feel that we've built a solution that will enable you to ensure that you and your players can get the most out of the technology that you've invested so much time and money in. And I think it's fundamental to say that we've developed Clipped working very closely with many of your peers around the world, some of the best instructors, academies, and facilities in golf. And we've been very humbled to have their support throughout this process. And so I guess fundamentally the question is, what do we do as Clip? Well, put simply, our mission is to help golfers get better faster, which sounds somewhat anodyne, but actually in truth that's what everyone wants to achieve, whether that's you as an instructor, or whether that's your student, your pupil, the player. And so how do we do this? Well, we pull all of the information, all of the data from all of those different sources. And we not only do we present that in, as Charlie will demonstrate, a hopefully sort of beautiful and intuitive package, but we do so in a way that redefines our understanding of what good looks like for every player, and it's complete golfing sort of DNA or fingerprint, if you like. And so that enables us to surface a bespoke, personalized blueprint or plan of action for you as the instructor to implement. It's sort of a roadmap, really. And so we're trying to not only redefine what the data means and recalibrate, I suppose, the technology, but also to connect you more efficiently and effectively to your players, to your students, because we want people to get better, right? We want people to get better because they're using Clipped. And this is the feedback that we're getting from our beta users every day, whether they're coaches or whether they're instructors or players, is that the blueprint that Clip provides is creating an environment for accelerated learning, and that engagement, and the more that players are engaged with tool and what good looks like for them is fundamental to, I suppose, our mission. And so ultimately, one of the key points that I want you to take away from today, and as Charlie takes you through the product, is that we are trying to deliver something that fundamentally is for you as coaches, as instructors. We're not building this in an echo chamber. We're building it very much with the thoughts and feedback of your peers around the world. And so fundamentally, 5 points. Firstly, we want to be able to show you what all of your golfers, all of your students are doing when they are golf active on and off the course in one single platform, bringing everything together. We want you to be able to open Clipped, so and in doing so, have an immediate insight into each of your players, where their skill is at, whether they are or aren't improving, seeing trend lines, and delivering you as instructors really intuitive graphics, and an understanding as to what your players need to do to improve. And I suppose that leads to, a critical point, which is the connection, which is a connection to your players when they're not on lesson tee, seeing all their activities, being able to comment and connect and to engage with your players, to essentially to deepen your relationship. And we feel, based on all of the feedback that we get, that fundamentally that deepening of the relationship means that you will be able to drive revenues at a base level, but not just revenue, but actually really high quality revenue. And I think that's really important, is that we're trying to establish new opportunities for you as instructors to build your business. And I think importantly, along with the technology and the connection and the redefinition of what good looks like and the blueprint, we're essentially trying to give you the proof that what you are working so hard to do is actually paying off when it comes to your students. And I think that being able to point to that together in a data-driven dialogue is something that we're very much hoping to facilitate. So with that in mind, I'm keen to stop talking and hand over to Charlie, who will take you through the platform. And thank you again for being here. We very much appreciate it.
Thanks, Piers, and good morning, everyone. I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and hopefully everybody can now see what is a scorecard view within our platform. And now, before we dive into the scorecard and before we actually go into the platform itself, I think a great place to start would be to ground everyone in our approach to measuring performance. And now, as Piers said, we've spent the last 18 months to 2 years working with instructors globally, and everyone that we've sat down with has agreed that, simply put, the role of the instructor, the role of the coach, is to help their golfers hit better shots. And so what Clipped's new performance metrics do is define the actual quality of each and every shot that their players hit. Now, that might be a shot that's hit on the golf course in a round of golf, but it also might be a shot that's hit on the practice range or even on the putting green. And so what Clipped does, it looks at the complete context surrounding a shot. And based on the outcome, we can objectively measure the quality of every shot that a player hits. And now that measure we call shot quality. And the way we represent that quality is on a scale of 0 to 200. 0, right at the bottom of that scale, represents the worst possible outcome for a shot. That might be standing on the tee box and hitting your ball straight out of bounds. Now, at the top of that scale is 200, and 200 represents the perfect outcome for a shot. That might be holding your ball from far down the fairway. That might even be holding your ball from the tee. And then 100, right in the middle of that scale, that represents the standard expected from a PGA Tour golfer. And on that scale of 0 to 200, we can start to build in lots of different standards for every golfer to benchmark themselves upon. And now, shot quality is the foundational metric that we use throughout our platform and all of our analysis. But you might be asking at this point, why aren't we using traditional metrics that have been used up until now, like strokes gained? And I'm just going to quickly share another screen before we dive into the platform to help explain that. And so, as all of you will be aware, strokes gained has very much become the gold standard at the tour level. But it's still taking some time to reach the recreational levels of the game. And we've identified that. And actually, Professor Mark Brodie himself does admit that strokes gained as a metric can miss out on some of the key context of the game. And as a result, it doesn't always necessarily convey the true difficulty or the quality of a shot. And so what we're doing with our metric, shot quality, is looking at the complete context surrounding a shot. And if we look at this example, you can see that some of those contexts are the lie and the distance to the target or the hole, much like strokes gained looks at. But then we're also looking beyond that. We're looking at the difficulty of the golf course and the particular conditions for that day. But then we're also looking at the weather for that exact moment in time. And so here I've got an example, which I'm going to talk to help explain that a bit more. So right now we're looking at the exact same hole. It's the 18th hole at Sunningdale in England. It's a 433-yard par 4. But we're looking at this hole on two very different days. On the left-hand side, it's the middle of summer. The sun is shining, it's warm, and there's a light wind. But on the right-hand side, it's the English winter. It's a very different story. It's raining, it's cold, and there's a howling wind. Now, in this example that I'm using, let's say the same player is the same drive, just on these very two different days. And that drive finishes in the exact same spot in the fairway. Now, looking at this shot through the lens of strokes gained, both of them are identical. Strokes gained gives these shots a value of plus 0.16. However, as instructors and as coaches and as golfers ultimately, we all know that the drive on the right-hand side in those colder, windier and wetter conditions was much harder to pull off and actually required more skill. And so what we do with shot quality is we look at all those other factors and we take them into account in our algorithms. And so through the lens of shot quality, on the left-hand side, we can see that the shot hit in the nicer conditions, that scored 109 on that scale of 0 to 200. However, that drive on the right-hand side in the wet, in the cold, and in the wind, that scored 117. As we understood, that required more skill, and that was a higher quality shot. And now, by understanding how we're looking at and measuring the quality of individual golf shots, that brings us to the second metric we use within our platform, which is player quality. What this diagram on the right-hand side talks to is the idea that we take the quality of every single golf shot that a player hits from their most recent round all the way through their historical data, and we can actually roll up those individual qualities to give us a really good idea of a player's skill level, both in the four different parts of their game, from off the tee through to approach, around the green and putting, but also how each of those four different areas come together to represent a player's total skill level. And so that's what player quality is. We're using that same scale of 0 to 200 to represent the quality of a player. And again, 100, right in the middle of that scale, that represents the standard expected from a PGA Tour golfer. So now I've done the hard bit. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm now going to dive straight back into the platform. And I think a great place to start with all of you on the call would be the team dashboard. And now hopefully everybody can see that. And as Piers spoke to at the beginning of the call, all of the visuals that you're seeing within today's demo have been created in collaboration with coaches. Coaches and instructors like Kevin Sprecher, who was due to join today's call, but unfortunately hasn't been able to. But this first screen you're seeing here is what we call the team dashboard. And the idea is that it's going to pull all of the different players that a coach and instructor is working with into one place. You'll see we've got a few different angles that we're showing within this team dashboard. As I've talked to, that player quality number will be allocated to each player that's using Clip. And hopefully it's going to give you a really good idea of how a player is getting on at this exact point in time. And we can see that at the total player level, but we can also see how that player quality breaks down into each player's off the tee, approach, around the green and putting. Now, if we were to look below that, we can actually see a brief snapshot of all the different activities that a player has been getting up to in the last month. And you'll see with the darker shade, yes, we're looking at on-course activities like practice rounds of golf and tournament rounds, but the lighter shade shows the other side of Clipped. And that's the fact that we look at everything that's happening away from the golf course too. And if I was to go to the top right corner here and actually look to add some of those different activities, you'll start to see the lengths that we're going to when it comes to the different activities that we're bringing into the platform. We're trying to make it really easy for the player, but the coach and the instructor as well, to bring in and record the lessons that they're having. Maybe to even bring in some of the different chipping practices and tests that they're completing, all the way through to the stuff that a player is completing in the gym, or even if they're just out on a run. And enabling the user to really easily title each one of these activities and start to enter a description and start to feed in how they were feeling at that point in time. We really see this as being a crucial part of our platform. And at the bottom here, you can see we're also taking into account media as well. And so when I come to the activity feed a bit later on, you'll start to see how video and photos really start to liven up each player's activity feed. But from here, the instructor and the coach will be able to click into another view. And this takes us to the team dashboard. And what we're trying to show here is how each player is trending in the total level of their game, but also in the 4 different areas. And so here we've used a very simple color scheme to show when a player is going in the right direction and trending very positively, which we can see with Corey Patton in the approach part of his game. But then we're also using that darker red to show when there may be areas for concern and when an instructor or when a coach might want to intervene. And so in this example, the instructor might want to contact Drew and say, let's get back onto the lesson tee and let's work on that driver. And at the request of the instructors and the coaches we've been working with, we've also added in a few different lenses which can be chosen in this view. You can go from looking at a 5-round view all the way up to a 20-round view. So you get the full picture of how your players are evolving and progressing over time. And from this high-level team dashboard view, the instructor and the coach will be able to dive into each one of their players' personal Clipped accounts. And this is the view that each player that's on Clipped will see when they open it up on their phone, on their laptop, or even on their iPad. And so what we're doing with our player dashboard is providing each player with a snapshot of their game at this point in time. You'll see we're using those rings from blue all the way through to purple to show the player really clearly how their current player quality sits, but also how that breaks down into their off the tee, approach, around the green and putting. But you'll also see just below that, we are also harnessing the value of traditional statistics within the platform as well. I think the best place to start with the player dashboard is actually to talk to the visual aspect of Clipped. And trend lines are a really simple concept, but it's a concept that we've used throughout the platform because we hear that they're very powerful when communicating the progression, the improvement of a player, maybe even to a player's parents, but also to the player themselves. And so here you can see that we can look at how a player is improving at the total player level, but we can also click into a different facet of their game and see how Corey is improving in his approach play. We can do that just by looking at his approach play as one, but we can also start to look at all the different distances that Corey's hit approach shots from in the last 20 rounds. And using that shot quality number, hopefully you can get a really good idea of where the weaker parts of Corey's approach play are, and you can hover over each of these bars, but then you can also see where Corey should have some confidence, and that's where the higher bars are. Now from here, I'm going to quickly brush over what to work on because that's one of our newest features and in my opinion, the most exciting feature. So I'm going to come to that later on. And I think a great place to go to now would be the activity feed. And here we're looking at all of the activities Corey has completed. These, as I said before, might be rounds of golf. They might be practice or competition rounds of golf, but they're also going to be everything that Corey's getting up to away from the course. You can see that might be a swing catalyst session that Corey's completed with his coach at home. That might be a chipping lesson that he had with his coach at college. It might even be a TrackMan test that was completed in his own time. And again, the idea is to bring all of the different activities that Corey's completing into one place, both for his own benefit, but also for the benefit of the coach and the instructor, so they can always see what Corey's getting up to and see how hard he's working towards those goals, which might have been agreed before. And what we can do from this activity view is actually take you back into that scorecard view where we started. And you can do that really by simply clicking into a round of golf. And that takes us to this clip scorecard. And so in the top right-hand corner, straight away, you can see what shot quality enables us to do really easily is actually identify the strong parts of a player's round, but also the weaker parts. And so just by looking at the average shot quality for all of the shots that Corey played on that day, we can start to see how Corey scored in terms of shot quality for each of the different parts of his game. And the idea of our clip scorecard is really painting pictures for the player, but for the coach and the instructor as well. As we hear from the instructors that we've been working with, that the player won't always feed back the true story of a round of golf. And so what you'll be able to do through Clipped is click into any hole that you'd like to see. And with this view on the right-hand side, you get a full breakdown. Using that shot quality number again, hopefully straight away you can see the best shots that led to the birdies on the good holes, but you can also click onto the bogeys and even the doubles and triples and understand again, using this view on the right-hand side, which shots led to that result. And we can see by using that scale of 0 to 200, actually the quality of each and every shot that was hit on that hole, as well as maybe the scoring history for that hole in particular. And at this point, it's important to note that with Clipped, we're trying to keep things as simple and as clear as possible, but we're also enabling our users to go into as much depth as they require. So for those more performance-minded golfers who really want to dig deep and get into the data, they'll be able to go a level deeper, and they'll be able to click into a Round Insights tab, which is specifically for this round of golf. Think of it as an analysis for just this game. And we've got a lot of information here, but to break that down for you, what we're trying to do is be really encouraging with the player's game. And we'll be showing them their best 3 shots from that round, but then we can also be more constructive and show them which shots were most expensive in that round and what potentially led to the higher scores. And just below that, we can see this shot quality tracker idea as well, which again is a concept which was made in collaboration with a number of college coaches. And what this shot quality tracker does, it gives you a really clear view on how momentum ebbs and flows throughout a round of golf. The story we often see is that players actually, in terms of the quality of their shots, they tend to flatten out towards the end. And that might be down to a lack of energy. But there's a lot of different things you can take away from that view. And we're just providing that talking point for you and your player. And again, you'll be able to go into as much detail within this page as you'd like. You might want to focus in on a player's approach play for just this round of golf. However, you might want to keep it relatively high level and just have a quick view of the scorecard and understand where the good shots were and also where the bad shots were. Now from there, I will zoom back out and we'll go back to the player's dashboard. And I think now is a great time to touch on the what to work on piece that I briefly mentioned earlier. So what every Clipped user will have access to is this what to work on area. And when a player opens up this what to work on feature on their phone, all they're going to see is this list on the left-hand side. And our aim with what to work on is to make life as easy as possible for the player, but also for the instructors and the coaches as well. So on the days where Corey gets to the practice range and he's got room to hit irons, what he'll be able to do is click onto the approach part of his game, and he'll have a definitive list, which is data driven and is going to tell him all of the key parts of his approach play that he should be focusing on. And now the way we come up with this list is threefold. The first thing that we're looking at is the importance that each part of Corey's game actually has to his scoring. I think the easiest way to think of this is on the days where Corey shoots really low scores and plays really well, what does that tend to be driven by? And with this pie chart visual at the top, hopefully each of you can see how important Corey's approach play is for him to score well. And just in second place, we can see that Corey's putting is actually really important for Corey to score well as well. It's got a very high percentage in terms of its importance to scoring. And so that's the first thing we're looking at to build this list. The second thing we're looking at is the opportunity for Corey to improve in this particular part of his game. So here we're looking at his approach play from 140 to 180 yards. The way we're identifying the opportunity for Corey to improve here is by looking at how good has Corey been in the past in this exact part of his game, and identifying how far he is from his very best right now, today. And that gap we're representing as an opportunity for him to improve. So the best way to think about it is, how far away is Corey from his best in this particular part of his game? And then really simply, the third thing we're looking at to build this list for a player to be working on is shot quality, and whether it's trending in the right direction, so getting better, or if it's trending in the wrong direction. And you'll see within this list, we're using arrows and colors to make that nice and visual, and to hopefully make it really clear for the player to see. But hopefully the way that we're coming up with this list and creating this data-driven library for a player is easy to understand, but we see this as being a real game changer, as I said, for the player, because suddenly their practice is going to be meaningful, whether they're on the putting green, or if they're hitting bombs on the range. They'll now know the different distances and the different types of shots that they need to be practicing. And on the right-hand side, when you're viewing clipped on a desktop like we're doing today, or if you're the instructor that's got clipped up on his iPad, you might want to start to look at the added detail on the right-hand side here. And again, we're trying to be as visual as possible with this extra detail. I know a visual that's been particularly useful and we've received great feedback on is this shot start and end lies. And so something Corey actually realized within his game is that when he was hitting approach shots from the tee, he was actually hitting the green far less often than when he was hitting approach shots from the fairway. And so what Corey did, he took that knowledge, he took it out onto the practice range, and instead of hitting balls off the turf, off the fairway, he was actually starting to tee his balls up. And straight away, Corey actually started to see the results in his game. And I believe the round that he took that into was this most recent round in the spring medal that he played. And his par 3 scoring, shot quality was up at 108, which was a vast improvement on where it had been previously. So that's a little story of how powerful what to work on can be. And we see it becoming more powerful by the day. And that is very much a whistle-stop tour of our platform. There's a lot more to it. I mentioned how you can add manual activities earlier on, but what we've also got within the platform is a library of drills, which we've created, again, in collaboration with some of the world's best coaches and instructors. And players will be able to go into this library and start to choose to complete some of these drills. It might be a putting test, it might be a chipping drill. And what we want is for all of these drills, all of this practice to actually contribute to a player's total player quality. But we understand it's a very different environment for a player to be competing in. And so everything, whilst it does add into a player's player quality, whether it be at the total level or throughout their game, it will be weighted to make sure that it's a correct representation of the importance of each activity. But Piers, I think that's a great place for me to leave it and for me to hand back to you and for you to add any thoughts. I think you're just on mute at the moment.
Sorry, guys.
There we are.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Absolutely. I think with the interest of time very much in mind, we're conscious that we've thrown quite a lot at you. We want this webinar to be meaningful and and to show you the depth and the extent of the proposition and the ambition that we have. But I think if we were to just sum things up very briefly, we are trying to deliver a platform where you can see all of your players and all of their activity in a single space. We can deliver metrics that enable you to immediately understand each of your players, whether that's because you're rushing between lessons or you're preparing for a lesson when you have more time. You can go into a very high level view or down the rabbit hole. And effectively, we're trying to help you to be much more connected with your players, which is obviously, from our perspective, something that we think will help to drive not only the quality of your relationship, but also the ability for you to increase your revenues by having that natural call to action back to the tee, back to the lesson tee. And in doing so, to give you that personalized, data-driven, objective conversation, which will support your teaching, to support your skills and your experience and understanding, so that a player doesn't turn up and say, hey, my driving's rubbish, I want to hit it 310. And it's actually a completely different narrative that you need to be having with them in order for them to enjoy the game more. Because ultimately, what we're trying to do is deliver not only the maximum value from the technology and the different technologies that you use and are invested in, but really we want to facilitate players to get better faster, and for you as coaches and instructors to be able to deliver that as effectively and as efficiently as possible. So it's a very ambitious proposition that we're sort of setting out on. But we hope that through this glimpse into the new metrics that we've delivered and developed of shot quality, of player quality, round insights, what to work on, that we can help to redefine the conversation that you have with your players, with your students, with your pupils, as to not only their skill levels, but also how to get better and how to get more out of the game that we all love. So with that, obviously very happy to open up to any questions, and say once again, thank you all very much for your time.